just a healthy sense of skepticism. And they repeatedly failed to do this on regional transit, on the Fuller Park parking structure, on the countywide
public art.
Yeah, public art, thank you.
Public art.
Just again and again, we fail to listen to the community, and I think that that's happening now, and we'll get into that when we talk about the coming year. But
yes.
There are a couple of issues that are coming up where there's been this obstinate refusal to listen to opposing points of view.
Right.
And if I can say something, though, I think it might be going too far to say that they misread the citizenry on the AATA countywide plan, because they didn't actually ever go out to the citizens with a vote. It never got on the ballot. They did some surveys that actually showed there was public support for it, and we can debate, whether those surveys were leading or not, or
40 to 45%.
I think it was they put the question of a $1 mil countywide transit tax before voters, and it got over 50%. And then if you and then when their proposal was actually going to be half of that, so they found that they had support for double what they were going to eventually ask for from the citizens, and it was the politicians that decided that they didn't want to go forward with the plan. So I think it might be going too far to say that that the politicians misread the citizens.
I will disagree with that, because those surveys didn't actually talk about taxes, and that's again not to the level, and so
they put the question of a $1 mil countywide transit tax.
But the way the questions were posed elicited responses where a small group supported it, and a larger group said that they might support it.
Right.
And that's before there's any contrary point of view mentioned. So a lot of the ballot proposals for the state polled in the mid 50% and then went down to horrible defeat. If you can't get really significant margins of majority in your initial polling, you're probably not going to do well when other people go, but have you thought about this aspect or that aspect? So when they polled, 54% said that they strongly or moderately supported the idea. That was before really hearing the other side. And you really can't expect success with those numbers.
The plan is one thing. I guess I want to go back to something Steve said that I think is
quickly,
pretty important.
Yes.
We learned from this, and I think that transit is not going to go away, especially in the core area.
Right.
I think that there's a great need and a growing demand, and that AT has to go back to the drawing board is clear, but I thought your point was well taken. We really shouldn't lose that we gained something from that process, and maybe it'll be a better plan as a result.
Okay, so that's a good transition, because let's look where Ann Arbor is going to go in 2013. So at the recent council retreat, council members agreed on the most important problems facing Ann Arbor. And the number one problem to solve is the city budget and fiscal discipline. And the number two problem is public safety. Lack of adequate staffing levels to meet community expectations and industry standards. That's what it said. So my question is, as the budget is not only a financial plan for the local government, it's also a political statement establishing goals for the community and their relative priorities, okay? So you were alluding to, Jack, that priorities may change. So that's what I'm asking. Do you expect priorities to change for this 2014 fiscal year for this budget? I mean, and if my understanding is correct, this is really Steve Powers' opportunity, the city administrator, for a new 2-year, so things really can be, and I think that Sumi Kalaspathy really at this meeting, at this retreat, suggested starting and looking at something new. So who would like to take that on? Will priorities change and in 2014? Do you think there'll be more listening to the citizens? Do you want to go, Steve? You look like, go ahead.
Yeah. Who else is going to answer this?
Yes. Well, there might be a few.
No, I think the priorities have always been public health, safety, and welfare. I mean, that's just the basis of local government. I think that's what every elected official strives for. All right, it's staying on track. That's the important thing. Okay, so over this past year, we have pulled money. We've authorized expenditures out of the general fund reserve, our savings account, for things that probably should have been budgeted for initially. but other things were paid for or budgeted, you know. And with the change in council, I think there's going to be a lot more discipline. In years past, there has not been that kind of discipline. All right, and you know, again, the matches for many of these transit planning studies.
Yes.
Okay, and I think that, you know, those things are, you know,
Right.
an-
Grants
an
are not for
example,
free.
right?
They're
Nothing's for
20%,
free,
right,
They're
so you have to
matches
give
and
it-
stuff, but you know, these are, you know, that information is always going to be there. We don't need it right now. Okay?
Right.
And certainly what we're seeing is that the focus is not going to be on Ann Arbor, it's on Metro Detroit, you know?
Right.
And, you know, and having grown up in Ann Arbor, I think we've all, I mean, we've seen what happens with plans, all right? We've had
Right.
lots of great plans.
Right.
They don't necessarily all come to fruition.
Right.
In fact, the vast majority don't come to fruition.
Right. So let me ask you this, as long as you're taking this.
Okay.
And you can chime in and see if this would be helpful. Should council ask the mayor on their behalf to make an explicit statement of budgetary goals, you know, telling the public government objectives, when, how, and why they will be achieved? Because if that's done at the beginning of the process, then citizens can come in and speak to it. I mean, we have not had someone say, this year, the next 2-year cycles, these are our objectives and this is how we're going to, you know, to.
Well, I don't think I can speak for all of council or for the mayor in this matter, but I think, you know, what is important that we focus on some of the things that are coming from the past year, all right? So when we talk about the proposal to close some fire stations, that in itself is a goal, I think, of mine, and I think of a number of council members, to not allow to go into effect, all right?
So-
I want to maintain our
so-
5 fire stations to
okay,
be
so
open. So that is
do-
a goal.
That's a goal.
all
Do
right,
we
and a very-
need to have it as part of the safety? Do we need to have a very clear statement? These are our primary goals, these are our priorities, and this is how we're going to achieve them. We've never had that.
Well, I'm not so sure I quite understand what purpose that would actually gain,
So
because when we
people-
adopt a budget, that is our goal
But
statement.
it's all over, you know, it's all over. You hear people voting yes and no in so many different items, and that, in my view, would give focus. People would say, yes, safety is right up there. We're going to do something about the police. We don't have the 150, right? That was a target, or fire. In other words, to know where these allocations are going to be.
Well, you got a $1.3 million budget surplus projected for the next fiscal year, so I don't think there's going to be a lot for residents to worry about in this budget process. I think it's actually going to be, hey, what do we use that money to do a little bit extra with? Do we set it aside for a rainy day? Do we spend it to temporarily do this, a one-time cost to take care of some deferred maintenance needs? I know there's a lot of stormwater projects, which Jack could probably talk about. There's street projects we could do. There's asbestos in City Hall that needs to be
Right.
removed. Heck, they might even say, let's put that $1.3 million aside for the Fuller Road Station project when that comes along.
So that would be precisely my point. Is that a priority of the
If-
people?
At the retreat that they had this week on Monday, they were identifying their top 5 priorities instead of what they're going to spend those last dollars on. During the campaign, both candidate Peterson and Sumi mentioned budgeting on a zero-based budget, which is you start with your highest priority and you work down your list of priorities until you run out of money. You don't just take last year's budget and monkey around with it trying to weasel something more in or more out. You actually prioritize every expenditure. So the next expenditure is what you would do if you only had $1 left. And if you budget that way, then everything that you spend money on has been identified as being the next objective on the list until you run out of money.